think that nigga did that shit.
You think? See, okay, so I do too. Look, I'm very much like, cool, believe, support, boom, victims, cool. But on the punitive side, I'm like, look, I want to hear all the facts. I want to hear what's going on. I want to see video. I want to see facts. I want to see text. But, bro, that text message thread is not looking good, bro.
They want us to apologize to them because this is like some culture war shit for them, and this is a W that they want to mark in their column. But you said something I thought was even more powerful. They want us to apologize for believing a woman.
That's what I think it is, yeah.
The vast majority of victims don't lie about this. The vast majority of victims tell the truth. Based on that, I will always err on the side of victims until the ultimate evidence and verdicts come out.
Jonathon Majors was found guilty by a New York jury today. The 34-year-old Creed 3 actor has been convicted of...
We don't have to be fully in support of Jonathon Majors to speak on the historic reality of what white femininity has done to black men under this context.
Yeah.
And so the symbolism of this large, highly successful, talented, extremely talented black man running 8 blocks away from this white woman that won't leave him alone.
We understand why he's doing that. I'm still on the fence, me personally, because of that London text. That's where I'm at.
What's the London text?
It's a red flag.
That history intellectual Riz.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever used the word Riz.
Until just then.
Why'd you bring it out now? Like why? Like what brought that out of you?
I just felt like the appropriate.
Because he didn't like that we made fun of him for having a bully named Willie earlier. He was like, I got to young it up a little bit.
I know. He fucking Googled Gen Alpha terms like on the side.
I know the word. You can't not see the word until.
Slang etymology is always like super interesting to me. Like that Riz is like a shortening of charisma. When I first heard that, I was like, oh shit, that's
big brain shit.
Webster's dictionary type shit.
I'm trying to figure out how Gat happened because like
what
normally
is that?
Gat, I kind of don't know. I've only heard Gat like
we old as hell.
Like Caribbean. I've only heard Gat like in from Caribbean like adjacent folks. Is Gat? Yeah. You're like I don't want to do the accent because I'm not good at it. But like somehow it's entered into a whole different. Now it means a butt.
Because I just thought it means
I feel like the
it's
white
just
people
a
did
general exclamation of like like yeah, as in like goddamn.
Yeah, like goddamn, yeah. But like the way it's being used, at least according to TikTok, seems all wrong.
I think I saw an acronym for it though too. Hold on.
That's just
also TikTok. Hey man, TikTok don't be doing shit, man. So I remember I had a conversation with a friend about like a relatively like well used term in the African American community. The friend is not African American, and she was like, "Yeah, man, this is one of those Gen Z terms." I was like, "Man, I've been saying that since high school." I want to say it was some like bet or something like that, and I was like, she was like, "Yeah, man, that's what the youth are saying now," and I was like, "No, it's not."
Bet it on. My whole crew is Don Juan. I feel like I should know the rest of those bars, but that's Foxy Brown from like at least 95.
Yeah.
96.
That's the pipeline. Like the black slang that's been being used for 2 decades to like white internet content where it's like, oh, that's Gen Z, that's Stan stuff. And it's like, no, you're doing a black scent. Or like, no, you're doing like just African American vernacular or English like peppered together with a bunch of shit that doesn't even make sense. You're mixing up grammatical styles. Like the way you're even saying this shit, it doesn't even. What do you mean you're fin about it? That's not. You don't put those 2 words together like that. What the hell are you talking about? But then it gets turned into like.
I'm gonna start saying this shit. Like
I'm fin about it.
I need people to catch the reference.
Good Lord.
But it's so fucking common and it's very annoying because it's like I saw somebody. She's like a dating content person. And she was like, I'm talking to this guy, and he seems kind of young because he'll say like things like bet, which I'm assuming is like internet, like youth. And I'm like, is he just a black person who's been alive?
Since the 80s?
3 or 4 decades?
Yeah.
Like,
or like a white person who has a black friend. Because again, like I have white friends who
been around.
Like years ago, started saying bet because I say bet.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, are they just like a white person with like black friends? I don't know.
Who just knows more than one black person, unlike yourself.
Yeah.
The whole thing is a little bit weird. But anyway, let's get into this podcast so we can start talking about the juicy, details and developments of the previous week. Welcome everybody to Waving the Red Flag, the number one youth and African American slang as well as dating podcast in the universe. It's your boy Eddie. It's Alvin, joined today by FD. He's currently away getting a tattoo of the name of a woman he just met last week. Things have been moving very quickly, so he's got to get into recovery as soon as he can. Look, instead, we got FD. It's the most festive time of the year, most wonderful time of the year. How you doing, bro?
I feel like so Eddie emailed me and said, "Hey, do you have anything festive?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm thinking I got the sweater." And I kind of feel a way that I'm more festive than y'all right now.
I got a whole tree, bro.
Look, man.
You know how long it took me to carry this tree into the room?
That Peanuts gang dying ass tree. That's
that shit is fucking crazy. That was crazy. That was wild, bro. That was you ain't have to flame that man like that.
I didn't even notice that was a tree.
You ain't have to come at that man like that, man. You ain't have to step on his neck like that one, bro. Right. Like that was
okay. It's leaves at the top. And
this
then
fucking tropical ass tree. Look, man. The nigga told me to dress festive. I said no because I'm a real nigga. I'm just saying. Like he was like, what's up with these fucking sweaters? And I was like, man, niggas where I'm from don't do this shit. We live raw. We live real. Where I'm from.
Be like, come on, man, we doing Halloween. Man, fuck that shit. I gangbang for breakfast. Okay, all right, fine, Alvin. Jesus.
Usually it's practical. Usually it's practical shit. Usually it's like damn nigga, you want me to like fucking stop by the store after I just worked fucking 16 hours a day? Like, no, I'm not.
Bro, I be giving you 2 months notice, man. Come on. Don't bullshit.
You gave me a week and a half, nigga. You gave me a week and a half.
I've given no.
Hold on, y'all
for the Halloween episode.
Halloween, dead ass. Halloween, you gave me a long ass time. I'm not even.
I give you a long ass time for Halloween. You just said,
I'm not gonna hold you.
Doing that shit.
I'm not gonna hold you. You gave me a long ass time for Halloween.
Man, participate a little
also,
bit.
I knew about Halloween because you did that same shit the year before. Like I could have planned for it. So
we've been doing it.
I'm not gonna hold you on
Halloween
that
2 years in a year. Don't bullshit. Come on, man. But anyway, all right. We want to just get into it.
Let's
what
get
everybody
into
been saying we need to talk about.
It's so.
Y'all need to.
I want to put
y'all
out
need
there
to
that
apologize to Jonathon Majors.
Apologize to Jonathon Majors. And this wasn't planned. Like I didn't know.
It really wasn't. Yeah,
was going on.
This is just the Christmas episode.
I feel like I reached out. We were supposed to talk over like a month ago.
Yeah.
And like I don't know what was going on.
I think you had to take a break. You had some stuff going on. Yeah.
I may have been laying low just because shit keep happening.
What did you do? What did you say?
I don't know. No, I've been good.
Okay.
I have been pretty damn good. And that's partly of laying low. Like I'll drop a video and then be like, all right,
yep,
I'm gonna be quiet. And then like I barely tweet anymore. Going into 2024, I don't have any hardcore political videos planned. We got this military video, so that might be the heaviest like semi-political video I do is on the military. Oh, and I am gonna do something about like black anti-Semitism. That's probably later in the year.
Damn.
And now with Kanye making his return.
Kanye.
We had the Indians and shit. The motherfucking pilgrims. It's the Jewish niggas. They dress the same, nigga. It's the same shit. They motherfucking made the Twix double the size, trying to make us fat.
I will say his comedic timing is still brilliant, though. I'm not gonna say which group of people. What? No, I mean like just when he's making a comment.
God, no.
Well,
I'm not gonna say which people. Not gonna say which type of doctor, which media. He was a Jewish doctor. It's still funny as fuck. I'm sorry.
He
unintentionally, probably.
Yeah,
unintentionally.
Because the rant that just came out the other day, I couldn't even make it all the way through it because it was.
He was saying a lot of stuff. I didn't listen to it.
It was genuinely sick. Like him in the moment.
It felt like mania. It felt like mania.
Yeah, thank you. I was looking for a word that wasn't too ableist. Right. He was
having a flare up.
Yeah, it was very much a mania moment, and like it's so wild for me to consider that he's a multimillionaire surrounded by people that do no quality control over him.
Yeah,
you
man.
Know what I'm saying?
His team don't love him for real, man. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think he also probably doesn't really. I don't know, but I feel like he probably doesn't really inspire accountability from his team, and he's in control of picking his team. So it's kind of like it's a self-fulfilling thing. Like if you as a leader don't pick people who push back on you, then those people aren't going to push back on you, and then you're going to pick more people like that, you know?
So how do you navigate that as the button?
I mean, look, you haven't worn a goddamn Halloween or Christmas costume in the goddamn 3-4 years you've been doing this shit. So we know we know I pick niggas that give me a hard time. So I don't know what to tell you. But I feel like that's his
10-4.
Yeah. But I feel like that's his issue, because you see, like, he'll get up on like, he'll stand up on a conference table and say some crazy shit, and you can tell everyone is like, fuck, okay, I guess we're making robot dildos now. This is just what we're doing now. We don't, whatever the fuck he said, that's what we got to figure out how to make it work. Yeah, because he is legitimately a genius.
I do wonder though, what haven't we seen from Kanye that somebody talked him out of? Because to give Kanye credit, aside from his music, because his music
has some crazier moments and was like,
yeah, like his music's been trash for. Donda was trash.
I'd say two. Donda was trash. Jesus King was trash.
Jesus King was trash. And what was that before that? Ye, the little like mini album.
Ye had some moments, man. Like fucking that. What's that shit?
Someday.
She could get.
Oh yeah.
Menacing. Trifling. Like that shit was. Nah, man, that shit went hard, bro. Like I was bopping that for real.
But that was the last moment where his music was of any real quality. So he's got two whack albums in a row. Oh, I forgot there was another Donda 2 happened. I don't know if anybody heard it, but everything I've ever heard about it was trash. And I expect this next album to be trash with him and Ty Dolla $ign. But like, so his albums be trash, but like everything else he does outside of music that actually hits the market turns to gold. He made $1 billion off them stem players. His shoes keep on look. So I get.
He single-handedly saved Adidas as a brand. Yeah, like I don't think that gets talked about enough. He single-handedly made them competitive in that like highbrow space
they
versus
weren't part of the conversation. It was
he
Nike.
Single-handedly did that.
Yeah. And like when you hear like whenever he comes out of his mania, but he's still very much in his Kanye, he sounds ridiculous until you like be like, well, actually,
wait
that
a minute,
sounds kind of dope. You mean tell me you make a player that plays different parts of the song, like, you know? So yeah, so I wonder what things we
creating beauty, 100%, visually and audio wise.
Yeah. His concerts, like it's a wild. It's so sad because like
about that Paris shit where he like had a fucking flamethrower and everybody was in all black. Which thing am I thinking of? You know what I'm talking about?
That was Donda, but I was also I think he did that for Life of Pablo.
Yeah, I think so. And he had everybody on, like he had like 50 dudes on stage in all black with like flamethrowers and shit, and it just looked like pared back, but just brilliant. Like it was good. I don't know. Speaking of great men, speaking of men who are destined for greatness, who are trying to do great things in this world, you know, the Martin Luther Kings, the Barack Obamas, you know, those type of, you know, men who have women like Coretta Scott King and Michelle Obama next to them. Those type of guys.
You know who that is? That's Martin Luther King's wife.
I don't know if we actually owe. I'm a little bit. I'm still on the fence. Me personally.
Well,
because of that London text. That's where I'm at.
What's the London text? I saw the text where I saw the text, like the extended text of the first text he released that sounded real bad, which was our the first time. Let's be clear. The first time we talked about Jonathon Majors, there was minimal reason to think that nigga was innocent. Based on what we knew.
They released as their first bid was wild.
Yeah.
But so based on what we had then, cool, that's where we were at. And I think maybe I could have gone slightly lighter, but I never was like, this person is guilty. I think he did it.
Niggas sound guilty.
But I'm gonna wait for, you know, further evidence, which I consistently have done. But so if you look inside the links that I would have sent for this one of them says Jonathon Majors text heavily implying that he injured her during a prior argument. So in those texts, he basically essentially she says, hey, I need to go to the hospital because my head is hurting and I can't sleep because you beat the fuck out of me. And he says, yo, if you do that, I'm going to go to jail. And matter of fact, since you even talking about it, I'm going to fucking kill myself. I'm slightly exaggerating the wording of, but that's essentially.
I did see that. So I thought that was from that night.
No. Oh,
no,
that would be, then I'd be less on the fence. It was from a prior situation.
Got you.
Which to me just recontextualized like I think the evidence that we have so far, I think pretty much adds up to, at the very least, very reasonable doubt. I don't think that what we at least have access to right now, which is a fair body of evidence, I don't think is enough to deliver a guilty verdict.
Yeah, I would agree.
And so with regard to that, I think more likely than not he'll be found innocent, and probably should, just based on what is available in terms of legal, who's got the burden of proof. But the larger context of like that Coretta discussion, which I'm kind of torn about, as well as these this prior situation text message is actually very damning. Like, this is the thing that would prevent me from being like, because I was waiting for all evidence to come out. He's proven beyond a shadow of a doubt not only innocent, but maybe the victim of domestic abuse. Then it goes time to, let's rally for him to get his roles back, to be Kang, like let me stand behind him. These texts where he's like, even if you lie, they might investigate, and that's gonna fuck us up. I'm like, this looks real bad. I don't think I can stand behind.
It's looking real abuser adjacent. It's giving.
I mean, I can't. I would struggle to find another interpretation for those texts.
So what if this is, because this is something we talked about before, and I don't think we gave it enough room in the moment. And it is hard to give this room because it's such a touchy, dangerous subject. You touched on before, which I wish we'd have spent more time on, the sobering reality that there are a lot of loving and functioning relationships that include a fair amount of physical altercations.
Yeah.
Now, these are not ideal. I'm not endorsing these, yada, 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 all the disclaimers. But the reality is, I know multiple people who fight their significant other on a regular basis.
You're not wrong.
And there's a space between, I don't know, passing judgment and like pushing things into so toxic, right? Abusive, possibly, but also like within that framework, normal for them. The complexity happens when you bring legality into it, because legality doesn't care if y'all have a toxic dynamic in your relationship. Legality says, and this is like one thing about this whole story that I wrote up. I haven't made this video yet. I'm not sure if I'm gonna make it, because I don't know how I feel about content around this at the moment. Is New York? The only reason he got arrested for this because New York has a law that mandates that under like
somebody has to go to jail.
That somebody has to get arrested. And that sounds good on paper if you believe in, the criminal justice system acting effectively to protect victims. But in reality, it just kind of expands in reality, it was a deterrent to make it so people called the police less during domestic disputes, and then forces people to get arrested more.
I see.
And
people are scared to call the cops because they're like, look, I want this thing to stop, but I don't necessarily want my partner to go to prison. So then it just, I see.
So you end up with probably victims of real abuse being in more danger by that, because the reason why they wouldn't press charges is because this is their housing, this is their their financial, their children, etc. So it kind of cuts them off from any type of legal defense, or forces them to put their significant other into the legal system, which then shout out to Alessandria. She did a really great video on carceral feminism that she got drugged for, but she's completely right, and she's quoting all the feminists. She's telling the truth. But
she's gonna get drugged with. Yeah, it's interesting.
Because and this is going back to the earlier conversation. There's something about rightful enemies. There's something to, I think, humanity's like psychology of like, there's the bad guy. Get them. You hit a woman, you're a bad guy. Period. Right? No excuse to hit a woman. And I agree with that. But there's also like, how do we handle that problem? Is it best handled through the prison industrial complex? The answer to that is clearly no. And that's been proven over time. And this is not me, FD Signifier, cis hetero man saying this. This is Bell Hooks. You know what I'm saying?
And I'm gonna jump in here because because I'm taking notes here and I have several. But the actual like person I thought of when you said like I'm quoting the feminists here was Bell Hooks, because Bell Hooks is often criticized by others in the feminist community as taking too much of a light hand when dealing with the notions of patriarchy in society, right? Bell Hooks often is the one that's like to be you know a bit you know crass here, the nicest when talking about you know the patriarchy, to be fair. So a lot of people, especially in the neo-feminism movement, don't necessarily agree with Bell Hooks. So it's like when you're saying like, oh, like you know such and such is quoting the feminist and like the feminist is Bell Hooks, it's like yeah, you know, a lot of people disagree with Bell. That's like saying like, oh, you know, I'm quoting the black scholars and the black scholar is Cornel West. You know, like a lot of people disagree with fucking Cornel West. So you know,
from my perspective, Bell Hooks,
and I like Bell Hooks. You know
what I'm saying. So from my perspective, Bell Hooks won those battles. So like I agree, there has been plenty of scrutiny of Bell Hooks by like especially like of the time of her like kind of becoming Bell Hooks, which is like the 90s, early 2000s. Yeah. There was a battle, but she won it. As far as I can tell, she won that shit. Because I don't know these other motherfuckers. But like, and she didn't invent intersectional theory. So when you start getting into Crenshaw, Collins, Hooks, that's like the triumvirate of black feminist thought. That has dominated feminist scholarship pretty widely.
But why? Is it because it's the most friendly to patriarchy, right? Who's propping it up? And I'm not saying I agree with that, because again, I just stated I'm a Bell Hooks fan. I like Bell Hooks.
Yeah,
I'm just saying like there are reasons why. Obviously,
I think because it was just the best analysis. Because
because I like Kimberly Crenshaw, you know.
Right, Bell Hooks argued pretty effectively. Y'all don't even understand patriarchy. Like y'all, you know, this Bell Hooks called out white feminism. That was kind of the first thrust of her work. Not that she was the only one doing it. Again, you know, name drop feminist scholars here, right?
Yeah.
But she's the one that kind of came up the most during that era to be like, look, this white feminist framing of these women's problems is not working. Carceral feminism was one of the things she pointed out, that it was white feminists using the myth of black male brutality to further expand state oppression apparatuses, which don't actually help these women. Essentially, my point is that she kind of won those battles. Now, I'm sure there's people that will tell me I'm wrong. I am not, as much as I get accused of being an intersectional feminist, I am not the ultimate intersectional feminist scholar. I've read the core people, and that's about it. But either way, I think she's right. Goddamn, that's my point.
Okay, well, look, in service of tying that to like the real world specific thing, I have two questions. First, I have a question about whether or not the concept, I think this is something that you were talking about, is the concept of like mutual abuse, because it's something that gets brought up a lot, emotional, like mutual abuse and reactive abuse. And I think some people, maybe even Alvin, you said that it's a misframing, and it's I'm not sure if you said this, but people have said
I 100% said it.
Okay,
in the context of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard specifically. If anybody wants to,
so I want to talk about that. The first thing I want to do is read these texts, because these are the texts that are coloring most of my interpretation of the larger situation, not just the case, but is Jonathon Majors innocent? Not just is he not guilty of this particular criminal charge, but is he a person that we want to stand behind morally, and go like, cool, I'm here to support him.
Which is two different conversations.
It is. So he says to Grace, blah, 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 I fear you have no perspective on what could happen if you go to the hospital. They will ask you questions, and as I don't think you can actually protect us, it could lead to an investigation, even if you do lie and they suspect something. She responds, redacted, I will tell the doctor I bumped my head. If I go, I'm going to give it one more day, but I can't sleep and I need some stronger painkillers. That's all. Why would I want to tell them what really happened when it's clear I want to be with you? And they go on to have some further conversations. Jonathon threatens to kill himself. There are very few contexts where that's anything other than him abusing her. And I can think of one. I can think of one, but I think that it would be a bit of a stretch.
Yeah. Also, like even just him. So let's say there's some context that we can't imagine where he's not talking about going upside her head and not wanting her to go to police, right? Like there's some magical context that isn't what happened. Him threatening to kill himself to control her behavior is abusive.
That's another good point. That's another good point.
What I'm saying? So like,
that's another very
there's too much there. What I was trying to get at is when toxic people get together, I find it problematic when we try to like prescribe, be too prescriptive about their behavior. You know what I'm saying? And so like what I wanted to get at earlier was that the best case scenario for Jonathon Majors is something akin to Amber Heard, Johnny Depp, in which maybe we throw both of them away. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
from a moral backing standpoint.
Yeah, and I had that as a second note. So getting to something that Eddie alluded to. So what tends to happen, and this is research backed, is that you have somebody that's being abused, and then ultimately over time, for various reasons, because there are multiple reasons why people tend to stay in abusive relationships. I don't want to rehash that. That should be common knowledge in 2023. There are lots of reasons. There's the attachment. There's the
economic,
fear
emotional.
of retaliation. There's, emotional.
Children.
There's economic. There's lots of reasons. There's fear. Fear usually being first and foremost.
I mean, yeah. Because if you try and just leave, you could get killed. So, yeah.
Exactly. So there are a lot of reasons why people stay in abusive relationships. So what you often see is that ultimately when they stay in abusive relationships, they tend to lash out and defend themselves ultimately. And then a lot of people ultimately end up calling that like mutual abuse, which is a very non-nuanced take on what actually happens in those situations. So if like I've been abused for years, and then all of a sudden I haul off and slap the motherfucker, that's not mutual abuse.
It's not mutual abuse.
That's not we're in a toxic relationship and like we're both like beating the shit out of each other. And you can and just being frank, like you can also like say that's still wrong on both parties. Like what you don't have is like a situation where like the mutual abuse cancels out the abuse. What you have is like two people being abusive that should be held accountable, to your point, for both of their abuses.
Which is two different things, though.
Two very different things. But like the concept of like like mutual abuse is usually like somebody got fed up and they fought back. Is usually what happens.
Right. And also make sure we put it out there. Aside from the testimony of the driver and her chasing this dude around the city like a Resident Evil character, like that shit. I'm sorry, that shit was funny. Like when the camera angles are flipping and he's still running, I laughed because it was just such an absurd vision to behold. But aside from that,
the state of New York is also crazy. Like the fact that they just had that shit.
Yeah, just had that shit. It looked like
Mr. Robot shit.
Yeah,
really like the way they were cutting from camera to camera to have one continuous because that's another thing about this is that like even if I'm doubtful about whether or not he's innocent in the larger context, looking at how much video evidence was like needed for us to kind of go, okay, maybe he's not guilty of this particular charge is actually kind of wild. Like that they got blocks and blocks of this and then a bunch of club footage. Like there's so much footage. It's actually kind of wild.
Yeah,
just to be able to say, oh, maybe we don't have a case.
Right. So that's kind of what I was trying to get at, is that we don't have a ton of evidence about her being abusive other than his word. And so like the mutual abuse conversation is stretching, it's a reach. It's how can we salvage our fandom of Jonathon Majors? Because I want to be clear, like I think I said this the first time, if it like in a perfect world when this first happened, it would turn out to be a big nothing burger from selfishly speaking. But the reality of how abuse works, that's not a responsible. It's not where the responsible thing is wait and see and listen to the victim.
I'd like to disagree a little bit there, actually. There are bits of this story to me that do potentially imply room for abuse coming from Grace Jabbari. The things that stick out to me are the testimony of the driver saying she was doing the thing, she was doing the yelling, she was doing the hitting primarily, which again in larger context doesn't necessarily mean that this is a mutual abuse or even a her as the perpetrator situation in all the ways that Alvin pointed out earlier. Two, I think that we're looking at the chase video like with too much of a funny lens. Like there's there's a couple of ways that it can be interpreted. It's actually not as unambiguous as a lot of the manosphere kind of looks at it. It's like, oh, see, she's chasing him, he's the victim. I think it's a little bit more because he's like pushing her into the car, and it seems like his primary goal is to just get away from this person. And it's hard to be in a situation where where your goal is just, I want you to not touch me, I want to be away from you, and someone is trying to grab you. How do you get away from the person? I think that looking at that through a too funny of a lens kind of muddies our ability to look at it for what it is, which is, if we had no other information and we just saw that a romantic partner refusing to leave the other romantic partner alone, chasing them down 8 like New York blocks, that's abuse. I think there's no real other way around that, and we saw just video evidence of that. There may be context that colors it one way or the other, but by itself, I would say that constitutes abuse in and of itself. And then 3, I believe there's a series of text messages. We haven't gotten those released, but they were announced as part of what was being placed into evidence, which is that throughout the night after Jonathon was separated from her up until being at his house, she was texting and calling him repeatedly, including similar threats of suicide. And then 4, she functionally broke into his apartment after he made it clear that they were no longer together and that he didn't want to see her. Those 4 behaviors to me are all without larger.
I have to stand corrected there. So to be clear, my sense of humor knows no bounds, and when I'm laughing at him running, it's the absurdity and profundity of it, like it's something from a Spike Lee movie.
Because he's running not shape, so he's like running so fast, and she's like trying to catch up. Like, there's a little bit of I see what you mean.
There's just the image of it. You know, I can't not think of Resident Evil. I'm sorry, I don't know if y'all play Resident Evil, but like the old Resident Evil games.
I'm halfway through Village.
Okay, no, but you got to play the old ones because the old ones have static camera angles.
The earliest one I played was Nemesis, so it had that kind of like.
So Nemesis, and that's what I was thinking. Like, this is Nemesis chasing him, John. Like it's all right. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
this is gonna be mad at me for this one. But the other thing is,
they're gonna be madder at me. Trust me.
The other thing is, he's also running for his life right now, and that's the thing that really kind of like.
Can you elaborate on that? Because I think I know what you mean by that, but can you elaborate on what you're saying when you say that?
Because historically, right, if we even without going through, if we don't have to be fully in support of Jonathon Majors to speak on the historic reality of what white femininity has done to black men under this context.
Yeah.
And so the symbolism of this large, highly successful, talented, extremely talented black man running 8 blocks away from this white woman that won't leave him alone.
We understand why he's doing that.
Yes, it's such a profound and to me, when things get so ridiculous and kind of sick, I just tend to laugh. I have just a morbid sense of humor. So it's such a profound, like, symbolic overture to that dynamic, you know, of, you know, you have if he's innocent, it's really fucked up. If he's guilty, then he's running for his life to try to preserve some semblance of maintaining his career. Because we're not going to look at a man that looks like Jonathon Majors, both physically but also his facial features, and say, yeah, he's okay. You know what I'm saying? So like, there's
probably the victim, of course, and that's why it's all hard to parse apart, because it's like you can be the victim of racism and also be an abuser. Like, those two things can happen simultaneously, and I think that's a thing that's difficult to parse.
It's difficult for people to parse that. Yeah, definitely.
And it's also, you know, and a lot of people, you know, I saw conversation on this throwing out Stockholm Syndrome. Something that I personally learned recently is that Stockholm Syndrome is one of the least supported things that has made its way into pop culture. There's not a lot of it's not a real thing. Like, the inventor of Stockholm Syndrome, like, watched some videos and said some, you know, oh, that's kind of crazy, and then people just ran with it. It's very not supported.
It's like
via meta-analysis,
vaccination research.
It's worse than that because at bare minimum, Wakefield did like fake a paper. You know what I mean? Like, he faked some shit. Like, he tried to razzle dazzle some shit. Like, Stockholm Syndrome is like a guy watched some news footage and was like, man, that's kind of crazy.
It's like the 5 love languages.
Yeah, like Yeah.
I love the 5 love languages. I refuse to let that go. I am holding.
It's a good
It's
philosophy.
so
It's not
good.
science.
Fuck
It's
y'all.
a good
I'm
philosophy.
married.
It's not science though.
He's good philosophy
guy's
versus science. Yeah, I'd take that.
Yeah, man. The guy's a theologian, man. He ain't a scientist. And also he's crazy. But anyway,
Stockholm syndrome.
a whole nother podcast there. But
Somebody did a video about it. I ain't watching because I was like, man, y'all ain't taking my love language from me. I'm gonna just hold on to this.
Okay. Wait, the Galvin go. I want to hear about this.
no, but you can also, looking at it from the other lens, you can very much see a body of research that says, like, if she's chronically abused, why she would chase him. You know what I mean? Like you can look at this from any side, and that's why. And again, I'm gonna say it, which is why I said people may be more mad at me, including Eddie. Is that, like, I just don't think this is relevant to talk about. If we're really trying to, like, protect the culture on any side of this, if we're trying to protect victims, if we're trying to be fair to Jonathon Majors, if we're trying to do anything about this, the only thing we should do in the interest of protecting all parties involved to the best that we can would be to report the news. And reporting the news, just being frank, ain't good podcasting. Like, nobody wants to fucking, like, watch us and, like, be John Oliver and just say, like, this is what the fuck happened. There are some text messages that came out, and back to you, Josh. Like, nobody fucking wants to do that. So I think that, like,
to John Oliver, that man's. Well, I don't
John Oliver's team,
does a lot.
and brief aside, John Oliver's team is top fucking notch. They're the best fucking, like, research, you know, for, like, team in that realm. But anyway, but like why? You know what I mean? So we're gonna have this conversation. We're gonna continue this conversation. I'm gonna participate in this conversation, and we're gonna intellectualize, and we're gonna throw out a lot of big words that are basically gonna say, like, we don't know what the fuck happened, and people are gonna say, like, we're Jonathon Majors apologists, and some people are gonna say, like, oh, you're fucking radical feminists, and we're not gonna get anything out of this other than clicks and comments, and nothing's going to be solved. I just don't like the conversation.
I mean, I obviously disagree for a
it's-
host of reasons, but
it's what it is.
I'll say this: a median ground might be to respond to the response.
that's part of what I think is relevant, because people are going to talk about it, and having a voice that's going, here's what we think is the correct or a useful way of interpreting the evidence that we all have access to is a necessary part of a conversation that's going to happen regardless of whether or not we make a comment.
Yeah. I say that because the reality is this has been one of the more interesting social phenomenon court case type situations in a while, in that I flip sides multiple times, and not on some like wishy-washy shit, just like the evidence as it gets presented, the stories as it gets told.
It's regression.
It just
as you get more,
right. As you
points,
get more information, and but no, it's that the information keeps conflicting the previous information, right? Like we got we heard it happen, and we're like, okay, wait and see. And then we get maybe the text message was like the first piece of evidence. Is like, that sounds guilty.
That was the first thing.
But then we get videos of her going to the club afterward, and it's like, that doesn't line up with the story. And then we get more text messages and him calling himself Martin Luther King. It's like, okay, this Negro sounds wild. And so, and then we, and so like it, so there's all of that, which I think the most fair thing to say is we generally don't know. What I do think is really interesting is that we've already had commentators telling us to apologize. And then, I don't know if that's the same dude on Twitter that has added me a couple times about it. But like, I've gotten that at more than a few times about Jonathon Majors, and that's definitely like a tweet, or TikTok genre right now is are y'all gonna apologize to Jonathon Majors?
Yeah. Which is like, oh, he's all the way innocent. He didn't do anything. And like, because I've been trying to get these guys on the podcast because I like a lot of their stuff, though I kind of disagree with them on this particular thing quite a bit. But the playback dudes. So they did a video, which we've commented on previously, but in the video, they kind of go, see, we told y'all, innocent, da-da-da-da-da. And then they get to these texts about, don't go to the hospital, and they just
hand waving.
They just blaze through it. They mention it, surprisingly, but they just blaze through it like it's irrelevant. And I'm like, there's a conversation that we have to have because we're not, as you said, this whole conversation is not just about Jonathon Majors. It's about who do we believe, what do we believe, how do we parse apart like racism with like putting victims first and believing people, like how do we interpret like evidence and media literacy, and it's a thing that we're going to have to contend with more and more and more into the future, and having some thinking conversations about what that should look like is really low-key essential. Like, we have to have these conversations.
I agree and disagree with that, but maybe not within the realm of how Alvin feels about it.
Okay.
Or maybe I do agree with Alvin, but I have a different response to it. So I'm of the mind that there's not a lot we're going to say on this that's going to be super impactful. So it's a matter of ethical, your ethical stance on it. Because niggas is still, like, the worst niggas in this conversation are not going to change their mind. They're still defending Tory Lanez. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, because they made a decision that wasn't evidence based. There was nothing that could have come out that would have. Right. But that's not, never in these conversations are those the people that we're talking about. Like in the same conversation that we had about the manosphere or incels, there's tons of people who are thinking, who are divided, who are unsure which way they want to lean, who aren't exactly well versed in media literacy or how to interpret information. Those people are being pulled in multiple directions.
And I'll just be frank, those people aren't asking us to apologize to Jonathon Majors.
Exactly. Which is
those people are doing
video for people who are asking for that.
Agree. But my whole thing is that if you're going off of what we have as evidence, and again the evidence is imperfect because there are a lot of different factors here. There's intersectionality in terms of, again, the fact that the prison industrial complex in the West is horrible. It is skewed in a manner that makes it very much more detrimental to people of color, particularly at the bottom of that situation as black men. So I think there's a lot of caveats. You know, there's caveats on top of caveats on top of caveats in regards to this, but there is more evidence in regards to this than not that says that victims are over. And I will continue to say this every time we have this conversation. Victims are overwhelmingly right in these situations. People overwhelmingly don't lie about this situation. So I will continue to say that the vast majority of victims don't lie about this. The vast majority of victims tell the truth. Based on that, I will always tend to lean
err on that side.
Err on the side of victims until the ultimate evidence and verdicts come out. And right now we don't have that. So I'm like, what's to talk about?
I agree with that. And that is true. And in those rare cases where a victim is proven to be falsifying a story, I can't remember the exact number, but like it's a ridiculously large
6 to 10%. 6 to 10%
that of black men that are
black men. Obviously, if it's 6 to 10% of all people, then it's going to skew more toward black men from a population perspective. But overall, it's 6 to 10%.
Yeah, so it's like
it's going to skew heavier black men though.
Yeah, and so it becomes a difficult thing to talk about because that brings that intersection back in. So Jonathon Majors has more everything than this woman. We don't know what this woman looks like, right? She doesn't have a $1 million legal team. She doesn't have the resources. She doesn't, like, one of the things, like, especially when I was more down on, not down, but like when I was more believing that this leaning towards him being guilty, was recognizing how somebody was manipulating the news media in his favor. Because there was that really long piece that came out. I don't remember who it was from. And it was very clearly like it was something came out, and at the end of it said that charges are expected to be dropped within the week. And like niggas on Twitter ran with it like, yeah, see, apologize to Jonathon Majors. And I'm like, that's weird. Cause like, how do they know this? And like, why haven't charges been dropped this whole time? And charges clearly weren't dropped. But when you have that type of like cachet to create a narrative through your influence, that's the type of shit that happens.
Or even the reverse, you know, like real quick, like you remember, I think it was either a Forbes or Vanity Fair piece that talked about like his time of being toxic and showing like these flashes of like anger and
psychopathy on set and stuff.
Exactly.
And his time at Yale. Yeah.
Exactly. So both sides.
And that's what's interesting though, right? So he used his power, fame, and money to hire a legal team, PR team to get his narrative out. At the same time, his blackness and his maleness worked against him for parties that are not even like interested in and like don't have any actual interest in the case. Does that make sense? Like it became.
It's not Grace Jabbari's team. It's
right. It's just society. Like, oh, we got another one.
It's a structure. It's a structure.
It's a structural
element. Yeah.
Because like it's so wild to me that as he was going when this happened, it was also revealed that Brad Pitt beat up his kids and Angelina Jolie on the airplane.
I do remember that one. And
it was like, and it's just it's such a profound thing that story still has no legs.
Oh yeah, no, I just saw Bullet Train last week. I forgot entirely about that shit.
I
didn't.
Right.
I
totally forgot about
that. As a real radical feminist, I didn't. His daughter at Spelman is no longer using his last name as.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that speaks to the unique thing to get back on Eddie's side that we bring to the table in this conversation. Because most of these conversations are news commentary or apologize to Jonathon Majors or niggas ain't shit, he need to go to jail. And it's like being able to weave through all these different elements of the story is hopefully very beneficial to the people that watch and listen to this. You know what I'm saying? I think
so.
And the fact that we have our biases, we have our self-interest, but we also have the capacity for analyzing the totality of the story in a way that maybe other people haven't developed yet. And definitely is it being amplified in our news media cycles. You know what I'm saying? So in that regard, I think it's a valuable conversation.
The fact that that it looks like none of us are wanting to say, hey, we'd like to apologize for having believed a victim. That's not something that any of us are looking to do. But we maybe have evidence to suggest, and to your point, fair to your point, Alvin, like we don't have a verdict yet, and there's tons of evidence that we actually do not have access to. We've got close to the most amount of evidence that the public will have, but we don't have everything that was available. I also don't think necessarily that a jury's verdict is the end all be all if we don't have access to all of the evidence, but that's a whole other kind of a conversation. But if it comes out that like, hey, this was an instance where this was part of that 6 to 10%, I think having a voice that says, yes, but overwhelmingly, this is not the norm is necessary. Mm-hmm. Like not having no voice that's pushing back saying like, okay, cool. This is an instance. Here's what we do. Here's how we move forward. Here's how we restore and blah, blah, blah. Here's how we talk about racism in institutions and what caused this. But this doesn't mean that everybody's lying. This doesn't mean that this shit isn't really happening. And if we don't say that, then it really just goes into two camps of like, no, he's still guilty, or he's completely innocent and all these women are lying. Not just about him, but about Johnny, but about Brad, but about everybody. So I think it's actually essential in that, like at that point of, let's say he's innocent, for someone to say yes, but
yeah, and I'll just be frank, and I'll say this as a person who's about four bourbons in,
and wine.
I don't. that was Castle and Key, and Arnold Palmer. Actually, that was not wine. I was mixing some shit up.
Oh, okay.
I be doing my thing over here. I don't even know, like, just again, feeling myself. I don't even know if we would have got there if I didn't say that. Like, I think this would have been like a fucking Jonathon Majors, like, fucking text message conversation. Like, if I didn't say, like, this is how I feel, and I'm saying that as a person understanding that Eddie Budden, like, has me on this podcast for a reason, to be that voice, to say that kind of shit, to kind of steer conversations to a certain way.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Like, I don't even know if we would have got there otherwise. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying like that was even like the intention of like what that was saying. It was like, yeah, man, Jonathon Majors, like the text messages, and like, you know, he was running eight blocks, and you know, man, you know, I don't even know what I'm thinking about that. All right, man, you know, if you see a red flag and like the woman running after you, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like what's if if that was your intention, like cool, but like I don't always see that as the intention when we have these conversations. I don't always see like what happens with that unless like I shoehorn it in, and I feel like I'm shoehorning it in. I feel like I'm shoehorning it in now, just being frank.
Yeah, I wouldn't have necessarily said that, but yeah, fair enough. But I mean, I think that's the nuance that the conversation requires.
Yeah, I would say you did a good job.
And I think that was integral to everything that we said from the beginning, because none of what we were saying was like, yo, we should apologize. This man's 100% innocent. Fuck the victims. Like everything had buried within it. Like here is precisely the reason that we need to enter with nuance. Otherwise, the talking points that you were putting forward, Alvin, wouldn't have even. It would have been like you haven't had to shoehorn them in. They fit quite neatly into what's being said. So I suppose I really just disagree there. I think it's part of the same conversation. You're emphasizing a part though, but that's where I would.
I mean, from my perspective, your argument that this is not worth our time, or that it's not a responsible conversation, was like actually really useful to make sure that the best parts of the conversation got in there. So from my perspective, that's exactly what you should have did. So I don't know, but maybe your point is more so like, I don't be feeling like doing that shit. I just want to move on. I'm not sure.
I'm just gonna be honest with you. That's I say probably 50% of it. It's like we've had this conversation, and we've had this conversation several times in regards to several different angles on this, and my stance has been 100% the same.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Remarkably
haven't talked
consistent.
about. I think it made sense to do it tonight, because when it started, I was here. And like now that it's ending, I'm here. I don't know how many times y'all have touched back on Majors, but it
only once. It's just, like it's only been like this would be the third installment where it was a major conversational point.
And probably I think 2 podcasts on Johnny and Amber Heard, same situation.
Oh yeah, true.
Same talking points.
Which
I didn't touch that one. I'm so happy. It's good. It's a good thing I'm racist against white people, or I may have not have avoided that.
Bothered with it. Yeah.
That completely.
You're not doing that type of content here. That's white people business. Okay, so do we think, just getting back into the shit that we're talking about, the Coretta Scott King comments? What's our take on that?
Wow, that shit is wild, man.
Do we want to get back into the haircut conversation?
Yes.
Which is it fair to say you can tell the type of nigga that don't date black women?
I wouldn't have called him for that though. But not that.
You talking about Majors?
Does Chiwetel Ejiofor have a white woman? Let's look this up, because you might. There might be some science to this.
I love making up games on the spot. I wish we had a chat.
Name that hairline.
Here go the game. So
it's a white woman.
Niggas is still so mad. Did y'all watch Swirl Economics? Did y'all catch that one?
I didn't get to watch it yet.
Because that was about interracial relationships, and ever since that was like the beginning of the FD's anti-race mixing series on me.
Dr. Umar Signifier over here.
Dr. Umar Signifier. Woke Dr. Umar is what I got. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Damn.
And
Eddie, he just came for your whole existence, man.
Dr. Umar.
Yeah, it was rough. You know, that's not such an inaccurate like description, but I know it was pejoratively speaking, so I don't take that lightly. To me, there's so all like, we're gonna take out the possible abusiveness because we don't know, right? And we're gonna ignore the case for a moment.
Okay.
It's so funny that I don't know if we got to him talking about Donald Glover, or we were talking about Donald Glover. I don't remember. Like, I know Donald Glover.
It was Donald Glover, Chiwetel, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Jonathon Majors, all of them kind of in the same boat.
Yeah, there's a type of dude who just so happens to often not get lineups, that is hyper talented, right? Hyper talented, off the beaten path energy, and as a consequence of this, might have less success in all black spaces, period. Not just with black women, but period.
But in terms of social clout in general, like social success.
Right. Donald Glover was in Decatur. He grew up off Candler Road. That's an all-black area where
the Cab School of the Arts.
I don't know. I don't even know if did he go to the Cab School of the Arts?
Yeah, he went to
did.
PSA.
Okay.
He did.
He was well before he got there. He was at some middle school with a bunch of other niggas, I'm sure, where he got roasted for being a Jehovah's Witness, having a big nose and not the best hairline, etc. And so that creates like this anti-blackness animosity that I don't think we have we don't got a good prescription around that. We don't know how to pull people back in from that. And I don't want to. That's getting off topic a little bit. My point is, for a select few of those dudes who are already a select few of a select few, when they get out there and those elements about who they are become validated by white people, it creates.
You mean their blackness being validated by white people? Is that what you're getting at?
The things that made them pariahs among black people.
Their weirdness, their success, their competence, etc.
Right. That gets them validation among white people. It turns them into monsters. It turns them into, at a minimum, maybe I won't say monsters, but it creates the
Monsters
type of
is a lot.
weird, monsters a lot, but it creates the type of weird race angst that we get from Donald Glover.
I get 100% what you're saying.
And Jonathon Majors. And
I
it
don't disagree
almost
with that.
always with dudes. Well, I think it probably happens with black women too, but I think it
happens. Yeah.
Or 100% happens with black women.
Yeah.
I got stories.
And because I was thinking about like Mindy Kaling and shit like that. Like I feel like there's a lot of Asian.
You're right. It
South
happens
Asian
across the
women do same exact
board,
thing.
and they turn it in on the opposite gender for some reason, which is why that Coretta Scott King thing. It sounds ridiculous, but if you like contextualize that type of dude, it makes perfect sense. It sounds exactly like the type of shit.
I was kind of divided on it because I think it came across more insane than it did in the actual content. Like the headline sounded wild, the audio was wild for a different reason to me. Because to me, what it sounded like was him saying, "Hey, look, I have a plan, and I want like a partner who complements my like grand plan. And here are some examples." And he gave examples that happen to be black because he's black. Like,
Look,
who is he going to say? The Archduchess of whatever.
No, I disagree with that.
You're talking to a nigga that like has those conversations, and I've never said.
That's
like,
exactly. I'm very curious what you have to say. So I feel like
I've never fucking said I need you to be like Coretta Scott King, bro. That shit is wild.
Okay, question: why is it wild? Specifically.
Oh my god, bro. Just say like you wanna a partner that like fits with your lifestyle and your like long-term missions and all that kind of stuff. I think like having like these like very arbitrary markers based on other people that you want somebody to fulfill is wild. Just say what you want from a qualitative perspective and it makes more sense.
Why? And I'm not being obtuse here. I'm genuinely like, because the reason I say that, the reason I'm asking in this kind of like regressive way is because it seems like a lot of people are looking at this and going, he's trying to turn his white woman into a respectable black woman, and I don't think that's what's the issue with this. I think there is an issue.
I disagree. I think that is the issue.
I think that is what he's doing. I think that is what he's doing.
So. I think if anything, okay, maybe that's I don't know. But for right now, what I'm saying is I don't think that's the issue. I think that
I think that's what he's trying to do, and I think he's using a manipulative tactic to try to do so. I think instead of like doing what I would do.
It comes across very Jonah Hill like to me. There's like a lot of
exactly.
He wasn't being entirely, and that's why I was a little bit divided, is because when he was saying like I'm a great man, I'm doing great things, he wasn't wrong. Like if we're realistically looking at where he was in the culture before this case, he really was next up.
He was next up,
like
for real.
He was really
niggas was saying he was going to be the next Denzel, bro. Like that's what was happening.
I said that probably on the show.
Yeah.
Michael B. Jordan and John David Washington were not like, they were the ones who we were trying to get there, but they just failed to launch.
They're not
Jonathon
talented
Majors
enough. Just being frank,
they just don't have that charisma. Jonathon Majors was going to be the next like black male superstar, like in a way that we haven't had since Will Smith. I think.
Right.
Yeah, the Riz. Yeah. So he wasn't being delusional.
Call back. Join the Patreon.
But what stuck out to me was he wasn't being delusional, but his something about just his tone and the context. It just gave the impression of that this has been a larger
Eddie, because it's
campaign
stupid.
of control.
Well, we always say yes. So larger campaign of control, maybe. Wasn't it over her being drunk? So
Her coming home drunk with friends, I think, is something.
Okay.
And he had a job the next day.
okay, that does. Okay, so I didn't know that full context. So part of me is like, you don't want your significant other to be messy, drunk, coming home because that's like dangerous, et cetera, et cetera. But it also could be, I want to control your behavior,
Yes.
et cetera. So like, therein, we're back into
There's a lot of
like,
condescension in of, like,
it
you
feels
need to get
Jonah
on
Hill.
program. It
Yeah.
feels
it feels Jonah Hill.
So there was a
adjacent.
bit of that.
But the thing that like I think both of y'all are missing is that he named black women for a reason, and it's just so fucking stupid and bizarre to me that he had
is he
the
supposed to
wherewithal. You can't
Just to get
name
back.
women of other races for that role. That's my point. Who? Jackie Onassis? Ain't nobody that there's no
Okay.
there's no
Now, see, now
white.
you're making
They're
a
not
bigger
holding
argument.
them.
Are you
They're not
saying
holding
that-
them down. Yeah, exactly. That is
Okay,
the
no,
argument,
okay,
bro.
let me-
Like, why is he
let me-
doing
let
that?
me-
Why is he
let me
doing
take this-
that?
Let me take this full argument in, because maybe I'm just missing the connecting bit, and maybe y'all are right, but let me just make sure I'm understanding the whole thing. Are you saying that really functionally in the current state of things, a great black, let's say, role model, male, whatever, it really does, you can't have a supporting partner that's not also black? Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
I'm saying
That's not what I'm saying.
historically. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying
That
historically.
seems like what he's talking about.
I'm
Okay.
saying historically, I can't think of the closest thing I can think of a white woman or a non-black woman being a significant support factor to a great man.
Okay.
I can't think of non-black. I think of Winnie Mandela. I think of Obama. I think of Coretta. You know what I'm saying?
True.
I can't think of any white women. The closest is Hillary Clinton, and that was because she was like, I'm president too. Like, I don't.
He's white. Ain't Bill Clinton white?
She was
holding it down,
She's
though.
white.
Oh, you mean white? You mean non-black women for men of any race?
Yeah, I mean, like non-black women. I can't think of non-black women for men of any race. Fuck, I'm confused by my own
Interesting.
words. I mean, like I'm open to being wrong, but I just can't think of historically that being.
No,
the
I mean, I
thing.
can't think of
Dr. Jill
brother, I
Biden.
can't think of a single.
Dr. Jill.
I'm just,
He said joking. He said Jill Biden. I'm like, I guess she nice. She a little nice in the mic, but like,
I don't know anything about her.
she's a school teacher.
Oh, that's
bro,
nice.
she's a professor, bro. You just like fucking just.
Oh, I thought she was a school
School
teacher.
teacher.
I thought she was an elementary school teacher.
Nah, bro, she teaches college.
She teaches pre-K.
Yo,
That's a whole lecture.
clearly I'm not,
they're both valid professions and like
Yeah.
deserve respect, but it's just
But
different.
let's not bullshit.
I
There's a
thought she was an
hierarchical,
elementary
you
school
know.
teacher. That is wild. That I did not know that. But it's I'm beating my Joe Biden supporter allegations all at once. But
I guess
are there
the
examples
question
of
is, what you
that?
supposed to do in that situation? No, I agree. I can't. I couldn't think of an example. So what is he meant to do in that situation? I know Alvin gave his answer, but I'm curious.
Start
about your
texting.
answer.
Start texting. What's her name that he went now?
Megan Good.
Start
I
texting
know.
Megan Good, who's played
here's my
that
thing,
role
right?
before.
Cleopatra.
Here's my thing, right? And here's
on the job.
why I think it ultimately comes down to some abusive rhetoric, right? Is because historically, what happens is black men think that black women are supposed to just like grin and bear certain treatment, right? So there's a long history. If you name the women, like even amongst the women that like we probably could think of, there's a lot of them sacrificing a lot of shit at their detriment for their man, right? In a way that like it's not necessarily as widely publicized amongst the movers and shakers of white society, right? So I think about, Michelle Obama had to give up a job where she was the breadwinner of the family, and she had to like take a huge pay cut to be first lady. Or, Muhammad Ali's wives dealing with like constant like infidelity and all that kind of stuff while he was trying to be, the Muhammad Ali that we all know and love and all that kind of shit. So I'm thinking
Same
about
thing
the
with
fact
Coretta
that
Scott King.
it very much seems like he picked strategic examples. Even Coretta Scott King. You can look at some
Especially
of those
Coretta.
allegations in those kind of situations and what she had to deal with in order to be the woman,
Bill and Melinda
behind
Gates.
slap. Fair enough. Honestly, fair enough.
Bill and Melinda Gates. She definitely was,
Hold on,
road
which
for
one
him.
is
I mean,
Bill
he was
Gates?
already.
Mackenzie Bezos
Microsoft.
is a
Microsoft,
Mackenzie
okay.
Bezos is a great example, right? She
Well, I
helped
was
found
gonna say that
company.
one, but I didn't want to. Yeah, but yeah, I was gonna
What-
say that.
Hey man,
So
the story's out there. But my whole thing is like I
What
think he strategically picked examples that further an aim of that, and I think he did that very, very intentionally. Like he could have said Hillary Clinton, he didn't. He said Coretta Scott King for a reason.
But because he recognizes he's a black
I think he's because they're black women, and and he's a black. Like, to me, there's just the absurdity of it was.
It's absurd and silly, but
It's
like,
very absurd. It's still absurd, regardless of anything that we're attaching to it. It's still absurd.
Yeah.
It's silly, but in terms of like, it's a conversation that was had privately where he's like, okay, really the question is, if you were on a trajectory where because Alvin, you've talked about this, you have been and are in exactly this situation where you're looking for, in part, and correct me if I mischaracterize anything, in part, looking for a partner who can complement, maybe not to the sacrifice of her own goals, but who can complement the larger, grander goals that you have for your life trajectory. I don't think that's and I don't think that's a bad thing to want. So if your partner happens to be a white woman, how do you have that conversation without it in a way that's culturally relevant? Because he wasn't just a great man or on the road to that. He was on the road to be a great black man, not a post-racial one.
Yeah.
But blackness was very much a part of his brand. Masculinity was very much a part of the brand that he was building.
Very true.
How do you have that conversation with your white woman is really the question that I think we're dancing around here. So how do you do that?
Oh,
You
man.
don't,
Please.
and that's kind of, to me, like, so
Okay.
I have
I understand.
FD having the tough, FD coming in with the tough bars on that one because
Because
don't.
FD is basically just saying you don't have a white woman, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
if you want to,
is it the same for you?
and don't get me wrong, because I just made a video talking about the fact that there are plenty of great black people, male and female, that have had white partners. Frantz Fanon, Alice Walker.
I did not know that.
I don't know. Alice Walker on the fence at this point, man. Alice Walker on the fence now.
Maya Angelou.
Very true. Yeah.
James Baldwin. So on and so forth. So it's not that having a white partner disqualifies you from being a great figure to black people and doing good work for black people. But if you aspire to the aesthetic, because that's what he's talking about. He's talking about the aesthetic, the oeuvre of here's this great black man with his great
Stage
white
attire.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. You know, like, and so like to me,
So
that's
so you just have to have. So is it
as he
is
said,
it don't
those
have a
were-
white woman, or
Yeah,
is it you can't be black and great? You can just be great, wild black.
you can be black and you just can't do what he's talking about doing. You can't do what he's talking about doing. He's talking about, at least alluding to, which probably now brings it full circle back to this being more about abuse than the actual rationale of what he's saying. But he's alluding to this black love aesthetic that he wants to utilize.
I feel like
He wants to utilize it to further that is going to further him into the legacy of
He's
lineage
not a
of black.
moron, though. Come on, he's not a fucking idiot.
Which is why I think it's
He
mostly,
might. First of all, my nigga, he might be, man. I'm just saying.
He might be an idiot, but like I don't think that he's that dumb that he thinks that he can have a
He
white woman
said it.
and be. No, but wait. Hold on.
People have thought that shit. People have thought that shit historically, bro. People have thought that shit historically. Let's not pretend like people
There's
ain't
no
thought
way
that.
that he thought that he could have a black love aesthetic with a white woman. He's not that damn dumb. He's talking about, is there a way to have a partnership with a partner that supports you if they happen to be of a different race? Is that
of
possible?
course.
So
what
what
does
he's
that
asking
look
is,
like?
can
He just happened to
you?
pick two examples that had black, like.
Well, because
I don't know.
You
I
as
feel
my
like here's
white
the part.
woman be Coretta Scott King is what he's asking.
And the
Can
answer
you
is
as my
no.
white woman?
Okay, so
Oh,
you just said
wait.
Jackie O?
Would Obama have become president with a white wife?
No, of course, but he's not.
I'll
he's not
even be
Obama, and he's
specific.
not-
He would have not fucking been Obama without Michelle. And let's trace that back, right? Like all that means, all that Michelle is rooted in her blackness. Everything that she is rooted in her blackness. Like he would not have become president without Michelle. Point blank.
But that's a
Period.
different conversation. I agree.
It's a different conversation, but it's
just talking about a supporting partner. I understand the examples that he.
But no,
picked
he's not
were
talking. That's
wild.
what he brings up Michelle because he's not talking, and that's why I'm now on the board of it being really just pure abuse at this point.
Okay.
Because the logics of it are so like what's the word? Separated
Detached.
from reality, detached from reality.
Yeah.
That I can't see him being serious in the moment when he says this. Because
It's just meant as control.
this is just meant this control. Because she's a British woman, right? Like she don't know this.
Yeah,
she don't know this shit. She probably thinks she could have been Michelle Obama because you can do that shit in the UK. But here
He did also have to hit her with the Coretta Scott King. Do you know who that is? Do you know who that is? It's Malcolm. That's Martin Luther King.
Right.
Like, that's a wild thing to have.
I don't
to
know.
say. Like
Eddie, you done had this conversation before. You just threw that out there real casually, my nigga. Like I'm just saying, you know,
I'm
like
quoting. First of all, no.
You're quoting
Second of all,
him?
I'm quoting the audio. I'm not quoting my life. I'm quoting the audio. Let me hide my hairline.
pull that down just a couple of inches.
Oh, no,
Just put it to the side a little bit.
this
There
nigga
we go.
Eddie come through like
Eddie,
like I'm
nah,
trying to be
Eddie
the
love
next
the
Harry Belafonte. I need you to
Yeah.
be.
I need my white woman. I'm trying to be Malcolm X. All right.
You see, I brought it full circle there. The Harry Belafonte, Coretta Scott King situation. Boom. You see that?
Oh, is that a
Podcasting
thing?
tonight.
What's
Is that a
What's the
thing?
thing there?
Is that
Yeah, that
that
was
some
a
lore
thing.
behind that? Oh shit.
That was a thing, man.
That had to be
Hey,
after Martin died.
Google that one, audience. Google that one.
Okay,
Deep
real
lore in
shit.
this motherfucker. This is why I'm happy Alvin here. I ain't had the Alvin experience though. I've been on this show. This is my
It's different.
third or
It's
fourth
different.
time.
Third or fourth time. Yeah, it's different, man. It's different.
But yeah, so
He's a treasure trove of information.
yeah, it's impossible to disentangle the ramifications of what he's saying to her, which is I'm seeking a specific black aesthetic with you as my white woman. And he's not, and that's why I think there's no way he was truly serious about this because he's not dumb. But he probably knows she doesn't know any better. She's also drunk in the moment.
Yeah.
So why was she recording this? How often did this happen?
Well, yeah, that's the other. I mean, that kind of leans it in two directions because it's like she's recording, so I always feel like you have to take a little bit of a grain of salt when based on who is recording because one person knows they're creating evidence, the other person is just kind of speaking off the cuff. But also, in order for her to know to record, this probably wasn't an uncommon occurrence. Some version of this conversation, so that's part of it. But okay, now if he had said, okay. I'm gonna still keep riding for this element of the thing. If he had said different names, how would we have looked at this? Like if he had
Give me an example.
Okay,
Give me an example.
if he said Melinda Gates and fucking
Charlize Theron or some shit. I don't know. Like who is he gonna say?
and who,
yeah,
okay,
aside
let's-
from
let's-
Melinda Gates, I don't know if too many women have. I just-
Mackenzie Bezos. Mackenzie Bezos is probably the closest example.
Did she,
Melinda Gates and
did she
Mackenzie
add a
Bezos.
lot to Jeff's like to Amazon in that
Yes.
movement? I don't know.
Yes,
I
she
just
was-
really don't know.
She was the
Yeah,
first
they were
employee
like
of the
partners.
company. Like she did a lot of the initial
she shot in
funding
the gym
and
with
work.
her.
Like
Okay.
yeah, like she was like for real. She deserved the money.
Okay.
So
cool.
if he had said that, or if he said what's the old girl Beckham and
Victoria Beckham,
yeah, them maybe that
Posh
would be an
Spice
example.
and
If he had said those, what you say?
Posh
I said
Spice. That was her.
Posh Spice. Yeah.
Posh Spice, yeah. So if he said Posh Spice, Hillary Clinton, Melinda Gates, Bezos, if he had said those examples,
Claire
would we look at
Underwood.
this as say again, Claire Underwood, right? if we had given those examples, would this be a totally different conversation?
Yeah, I think so. 'Cause
Maybe.
it would be
Yeah.
less bizarre. It would be less because even when you say so, like I'll give you that definitely. Bill Gates'
Bill and
wife
Melinda.
is Melinda Gates and Mackenzie Bezos definitely like contributed to the growth of those things in ways that could be comparable to Michelle Obama, Coretta, so on and so forth, right? That still is not an aesthetic that carries with white women the way it does with black women. Because nobody was worried about Bill Gates getting murdered as he started Microsoft. You see what I'm saying? Like nobody's worried about Jeff Bezos going on the business trip and getting strung up on a tree. And so
True, but also, is that a thing that Jonathan made? Like,
well,
a
no,
little
but,
bit.
but I'm
not-
saying
I don't want to discount that entirely.
he's evoking that aesthetic tied
Yes.
explicitly to his blackness. And
Yeah,
to me, that's why it's so bizarre because like you don't do that with your white partner. That in and of itself is just not nice to a white. I wouldn't do that if I had a white partner. I wouldn't like maybe we have some fun. Yeah, I wouldn't say, look, I need
You wouldn't
more.
invoke Martin Luther King.
Yeah, like
That's
that's just
okay.
inconsiderate partnering. At a
Okay,
minimum,
it's putting
let alone
a lot
the
on a white woman
bizarreness
to
of
be
it.
like, "Hey, look, I'm Martin Luther King, and you're my white woman." All right. Maybe this is not the example to pick. But okay,
I
Alvin,
mean,
can you
there are
speak to
books.
what?
I'm sorry.
Can you speak to what these conversations look like for you? Like, what does it look like to have this conversation?
Can I add
earnest?
some more context? I'm sorry, because if that's okay for the podcast consumption, of course.
Yeah.
And please be aware, Alvin, you've had alcohol in you, so don't take a moment to think about what you're about to say. Extra step. Alvin's like, fuck it.
We've got this on the other side of an edit, so like if there's anything that needs to be taken out, we can. But
Right.
let me get out this
I've
question.
already
So-
said things I shouldn't have said. Anyway, go ahead.
So the question is just provide all the context for FEEK as well as or FD as well as the kind of audience, etc. Of what does it look like to have a conversation with your partner about their role in your life trajectory in a way that isn't rooted in toxic control, manipulation, delusional grandeur, etc. Is the question.
So to give the full context, I mean, I have, various aspirations. I see myself raising, my status financially, politically, socially, exponentially. And I think that partnering with the right partner is very important to doing so. I will say, and I've thought about this quite a bit during this conversation, a lot of it doesn't even have to be said. A lot of it goes into who you're picking as a partner. You know what I mean? Like I've very, very little has ever had to be said. It's more about like I'm picking a specific kind of partner. I'm picking a person based on education, based on status, based on ambition and social climbing. Like I'm doing a lot of stuff a priori so that like I don't have to necessarily have the conversation. However, in the instances where I've had to have the conversation, specifically in regards to like politics and all that kind of stuff, it's very like, hey man, if I need you to like be on TV, would you be comfortable with that? If I need you to to stop the pavement, those kind of things, like those conversations have happened. But it's very simple to have those conversations because I'm doing a lot of the work on the front end on who I'm picking as partners, right? Like it's not something that like I have to be like, oh, would you do this?
Turn
It's like,
Katy Perry into Coretta Scott King.
yeah, it's like I'm already looking for Coretta Scott Kings,
Yeah.
Which-
So
figuratively speaking.
yeah, yeah. So in those situations, because we've also talked about like a big part of the podcast is talking about relationships and kind of like having conversations about needs, boundaries, etc. Like a lot of times in relationships, you end up in situations where you go, hey, here's the thing that you did that was an issue for me. I'd like to discuss how we get past that, whether or not that's me reinterpreting the nature of that behavior or you changing that behavior. And that's the thing that men say to women and women say to men both, and it's both valid. An example that you brought up a lot was like cleanliness in the home, that you had to have conversations with your partner around pick up your fucking laundry, but said in a way that obviously kind of is
wasn't that
empathetic,
direct.
etc. So is there any situations where you have had to or have thought about having to have like conversations around requesting a partner to adjust or consider adjusting something about themselves or the way they conduct themselves at all? And maybe the answer is just no. So
The answer is no.
Really?
Just being frank, like the kind of women that like I've historically dated, as an adult at least, they're ready made for that kind of shit. You know what I mean? Like
Got you.
I've joked before that like my dating history is like a fucking Forbes 40 under 40 list. You know what I mean? So it's like I haven't had to like I haven't had to like do that kind of stuff. So it's
Okay,
like,
so I'm thinking about like just the general concept of adjusting to your partner, like that you haven't had that, or
I mean,
specifically to do with the political shit, not in general.
yeah, like
Okay.
specifically
When you
do
say
that,
that,
but
okay.
to Eddie's point, like those conversations, and again, like I need you to fold your laundry. Yes, all the time. You know what I mean? Like I've had to make adjustments. I've had to have conversations about adjusting, but those have typically been easier because they're smaller scale. They're they're very like, how do we maintain a household kind of thing, not how do we build a future and like move ourselves forward kind of situation. So they're simpler. But I've never had to have a conversation about like, oh, you're doing something that may like impact me on a level that hinders my future with anybody, because the women that I've historically been attached with are social climbers themselves, and in situations, quite frankly, where they would probably be like above me. Like I'm thinking, just like my, doctors, lawyers, college professors, like I've never had to have that conversation.
I think that ties very well back into like the Jonah Hill conversation we had, which I think a point that I made was that if you have to micromanage the person to make them into the partner that you need, it's probably just not the right fit. Like if you're having to do that level of stuff, one, is probably not the right fit, but two, are you even actually looking like it's? And this maybe this is maybe evidence to both of y'all's argument that it's basically like, look, you've gotten a white woman who, in your view, is a drunkard, an English white woman who, in your view, is a fucking alcoholic, and you're trying to turn her into like your pristine black woman partner. It's like, is this actually a serious goal, or is this just like you picked someone who's so far off what you're actually even looking for? You're just trying to like kind of mold, like you're not interested in actually them getting there. You're interested in browbeating them for their failure to be like whatever this partner is that you're looking for, instead of just looking for that partner. And there's something to that, and I think that's to the credit of both of you all's argument. So
yeah, it's just it's so funny. I hadn't thought about it that deep until we actually had to tease it out. So I don't think being mean to your significant other in isolation is abuse. I feel like the way we talk about abuse is often detrimental to like truly understanding abuse and its worst effects.
Yeah, he's not on trial for being a dickhead.
Yeah,
but
being a dickhead being a dickhead or a bad boyfriend or girlfriend isn't a crime. It shouldn't be criminalized. And we have a propensity of doing that, especially in online spaces. I can't remember who did some some fucked up shit, and then people were like, put him in jail. I'm like, whoa, put him in jail?
Timberlake,
you know what I'm saying?
Really?
Timberlake was a good example with like the Britney Spears memoir coming out. Like,
right. And that's some
horrible boyfriend, horrible partner.
Shit.
Yeah,
not a criminal. At least as far as we know now, because the way this shit works with these motherfuckers. Giuliani, Diddy, I'm happy I missed those too. Because I was thinking as you talked about Jonah Hill, like, ooh, I'm happy I wasn't here for Jonah Hill, because I remember when that happened. But yeah, so I say all that to say, you said something earlier when we're getting into the apologize to Jonathon Majors it's not even a conversation. It's just people shouting from the ether who are really, and you said earlier what I thought was, I had said they want us to apologize to them because this is like some culture war shit for them, and this is a W that they want to mark in their column. But you said something I thought was even more powerful. They want us to apologize for believing a woman.
That's what I think it is, yeah.
And there's so much to that informs this isn't the real conversation, but it is something to think about, which is the moral nature of continuing to support Jonathon Majors after all of this. And by support, I don't personally mean, will I watch Loki season 2, right? I'm more so talking about like endorsing the individual and like the fanfare, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not a complete separate the art from the artist type of guy, right? Like, I'm not looking forward to the new Kanye album. Like, this is the least I've been interested in the Kanye album. But that's because I have now been so disgusted by his behavior that engaging with his art no longer interests me. You get what I'm saying? There's a conversation around how do we respond to so there's like the conversation around this person's work and existence and like fanfare, which isn't even necessary. And then it's like the advocacy of an individual in these online social media spaces. I'm getting a little tired, so I don't know if that came across.
When you say advocacy, do you mean like, because what I'm thinking about is, am I going to watch his movies? That's one thing. But the other is, am I going to ride for him in like as a content creator, being like, you guys should go watch his movies. He's a great person.
Not even as a content creator. Like, I was a fan. I was a fan of the concept of Jonathon Majors. I talked about, I don't remember when I talked, I'm sure I talked about it a couple of times before this all happened. Because it's like,
right before
you take this dude, come out of nowhere, super talented.
He was next up.
He was next up.
Yeah.
So like, I was a fan of just that concept of a new nigga to root for, especially since like rooting for niggas ain't worked out a lot recently.
Oh man, it's been a little rough, honestly.
It's been a little rough, you know? And so like that's what I'm talking about. Is like You know, do I got to start rooting for John David Washington again? I know you don't fuck with John David Washington, but I was on board for a second. I was trying to make it happen.
He's a fucking acting dead log, man. Like he has he has the least riz I've ever seen of any leading man.
No charisma. Holy shit, Jesus Christ! Why do they keep putting him in? Washington. He's such a nepo baby. How is he getting these?
He be in good movies doing nothing, bro. I'd be like, what the fuck?
Fucking Tenet. Like, how is he at the front of these massive, like what would have been Denzel or Will Smith movies, and he can't act?
Put Michael B. Jordan in that shit, and I don't even like that nigga as an actor neither. But put Michael B. Jordan in that shit.
First
Michael B. Jordan in Tenet, that shit crushes.
It's still trash. Tenet is trash because of fucking.
I agree, but still,
what's the director's name? Because Jonathan Nolan, Christopher Nolan. Yeah.
But Jonathan didn't write. That's the issue, right? So when Jonathan writes and Christopher directs, money, but Jonathan didn't write Tenet. That's the issue. But I digress.
Because Tenet's problem was the movie was a bad movie to begin with.
Yes.
I thought John David Washington was really good, and the thing he did was Zendaya. I can't remember it.
Malcolm and Marie.
Malcolm and Marie.
I hadn't watched.
The script was bad. The script was bad.
It didn't look good to me.
I disagree with that. The script had problems.
They did what they had to do. They did what they had to do.
The script had problems. There's, Sam Levinson has now further exposed himself as kind of a hack. But that particular movie, aside from the moments where Sam Levinson couldn't help but insert himself into the movie, I really thought it was.
I'm a great creator.
Yeah, right. I thought it was captivating media at a minimum. Even if you don't like exactly what you're watching.
Have you seen The Creator?
Is that the one he just did with the robot baby?
With the robots? Yeah.
No.
With the robot baby.
Is it really bad?
Garbage. I mean, it's fun. It's a good movie. It's a good movie. It's got good. It's got good.
Just unequivocally, no garbage, no nuance. Just like no fucking caveat. It's just garbage.
Didn't they get good reviews?
Look, it's got great it's got great sci-fi mechanics in it. It's got great production design. It's got great lighting and cinematography. The plot and the acting are stupid. Like, I'm easy to please with sci-fi, so I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it, but it was like a 6 out of 10.
Oh man.
Okay.
I just feel like if you, he is doing an impression of his dad, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like he's doing an AI voice impression of his dad with no charisma. It's like they took Michael Cera and put a Denzel Washington and that's John David Washington's on-screen performance. It's really, really quite awful.
Well, damn, you better get used to it because that's all we got now.
That's all we got. Fucking Michael B. Jordan and John David Washington.
Hold on.
There's nobody left.
I don't know if we're at the end, but we at least humor me. Who we got left? So we got Michael B. Maybe? I don't think Lakeith is ever.
It's Bow Wow, man. I'm telling you.
Did you say Bow Wow? Soldier Boy.
Come on,
yeah.
Jaden Smith. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let me Google it. Alvin, you're ruining this for me.
Yeah. I would say, for young. I mean, Chiwetel Ejiofor maybe is kind of he's
older. He's like pushing 50.
Is he too
John,
old?
man, I'm telling you, it's John. It's John.
30s, 40s. He don't have it.
John David Washington.
His dad had it. Denzel was 24 in Glory. He had it from day one.
Damn,
fair
enough.
John
24 in Glory. That's wild.
Is that not
he was
wild?
That good.
He had it immediately. John don't have it. He just doesn't have it.
Somebody got to catch fire old, man. Somebody got to be the fucking John Hamm of niggas, man. Like, somebody can find it late.
Idris.
I'm looking at these.
Idris is fucking 65 years old, but that motherfucker be acting when he want to.
Yeah, he's still doing kickboxing and goddamn rap albums. So fuck it, he might. Who knows? Who else? It's nobody.
It's nobody.
It's not.
You know who I think? Like, I don't know where he went, but I think he's been good in everything he's been in.
Anthony Mackie.
Nah, Anthony Mackie's he ain't really got it. He ain't got that it factor. I think
that ain't it.
Yeah, I don't remember his name. It's like he has a Yanla type thing in his name. But the dark skinned brother from Insecure, that was the other guy. He's
Lawrence?
No, not Lawrence. The other guy. Damn, they're both dark skinned.
I'm thinking fucking like Also, like just being, and again, I was now that you got me thinking about shit, I'm thinking Trevante Rhodes, who I think was really good in.
Oh yeah.
Like,
He ain't really had a chance.
Moonlight.
To do nothing. Yeah, he's in Moonlight, and it's like
He ain't done. I mean, Bird Box.
Yolande
Bird
Noel?
Box.
Yolande Noel. I just looked it up. Yolande Noel, in the handful of things I've seen him in, specifically that he was really good for what it was in that one Purge movie. And then in the not the Notebook, that's the white version. What was it was like the Black People's The Notebook. It had Issa Rae.
With Issa Rae?
Yeah, Issa Rae was in it with Lakeith Stanfield.
Yeah.
But he was like, he played a character like in the past. And he was so good. It was an amazing performance from him. No,
who was
Yolande Noel.
Oh, Yolande.
He played like a Fisher, he played Issa Rae's like long lost dad or whatever. And it was an amazing performance from him, and like I don't think he's been in anything since. And it's frustrating. I know he's on the shorter side maybe, but like that dude,
I swear to God,
Rhodes.
that's the only thing that's holding Trevante Rhodes back though, because that motherfucker's like 5'6". Like that's the only thing holding that nigga back.
Trevante Rhodes is not no 5'6".
I swear to God, that nigga short, bro. Look that up, man. Google that. I bet you he's 5'8".
That's crazy. I thought he was like 6'2".
Yolande
Noel
is
6 foot tall,
yeah.
man.
This nigga ain't no 6 foot tall, bro. I swear to God, bro.
Hold on.
Trevante Rhodes. I'm already Googling. This is he's 6 feet tall.
Man,
Niggas
he's
be
6
lying,
foot,
bro.
man.
Niggas
Get
be
out of
lying.
here. You just say he's.
That mean he's 5'9".
5'6".
That mean that nigga's 5'9". He's about
Well,
he's 6 foot tall.
I'm just saying,
that
for you
nigga's 5'9".
5'10" in Hollywood, that's close enough. Everybody, only people that's actually tall is Will Smith and a handful of these other niggas.
No, because he's standing next to what's old boy from like who played Chiron in Moonlight, the middle iteration. Sanders.
Yeah.
He's standing next to him. And he's taller than him.
Yeah,
And that kid's a model, so I know he's at least like 6.
He's at least 6 feet tall if he's a model. That's fair.
And he's standing right next to this kid.
Yeah,
got
that was the photograph, and that was the thing with Issa Rae that Yolande Noel was in. That was the last thing he was in. Let's bring it full circle.
We don't have nobody else, man.
Yeah, we don't have nobody else, and that like
I don't
that
even
makes
think
me.
Trevante really fully has it. Oh, actually,
I don't
him
think
and
Trevante
Mike,
has it either.
He did him and Mike was actually really good. They kind of dropped the ball, but the first like 3 episodes of Mike were
I didn't watch
fucking
that.
killed it. He fucking killed it in the first 3 episodes. He did a really good job.
Yeah, I need to.
He's got it. He's got that it factor. He just needs chances.
He needs to.
I think
roll,
off that Mike performance alone, he just needs chances. Oh, Mahershala Ali.
He's like 60.
He's dead ass like 50
old.
years old, but he be acting his ass off though. For
He
real,
be
though.
acting his ass
that
off,
nigga,
but he's
do
also-
be
I saw him
acting.
in Swan Song. He was good.
That nigga do be acting.
I knew he was ill. Well, I knew he was ill early on, but like I never forget.
Place Beyond the Pines.
In
fucking
in fucking Luke Cage, when he died.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, they killed him?
yeah, that shit made
All
me
right,
mad.
I guess
he
I'll
was the
finish.
best. He was one of the best parts of the show.
I hated
The
Luke
villains were
Cage. That was
fine
a
though.
terrible show.
It was, but the villains were fine. Like Cottonmouth and like all the villains were fine, but the show overall
Cottonmouth
was
the only good thing about it. What I think is probably one of the worst Marvel entries to date.
that and Iron Fist.
Luke Cage gave
And Iron
pull up your
Fist.
pants, nigga, vibes.
Ah,
all through
yes,
it.
it was so. It felt like it was written by like a white person or like.
It's written by old black
old
people.
head.
Yeah.
It's written
It
by
was
old
so,
black
like,
people.
The slang was off. The politics was weird. It was everything was.
I let it
terrible.
slide because Luke Cage is a comic that never fully found
It's a
an
black
audience
exploitation. Like it's a
after-
black exploitation.
Yeah, so
Era
it was
comic.
made for the people that made it. They were like, look, this is a love letter to us from our youth. Where's he at? Where dude at from Luke Cage?
Michael
Coulter?
whatever.
Not Michael. What's his name? Michael.
Coulter.
He trying to convince his white women to be Coretta Scott King. That's where he's at.
That is his flavor.
Full
But no,
circle.
The reason that I don't give Luke Cage a lot of credence is because Black Lightning did exactly what they were trying to do correctly. Like Black Lightning is a sci-fi blaxploitation series, and they like and it's low key respectability politics like lectury, but they do it very well. They do it very well.
Touche.
Very
Foreign.
very Coach Carter type shit.
Boy, when Foreign heard dude's accent, I'll never forget when, because I didn't know what a bad Caribbean accent really sounded like, except for like a handful of times.
And Luke Cage.
Yeah, Luke Cage. But when Foreign pointed out, like, nah, dude, this is the
Bushmaster.
worst thing I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, that has to be a hate crime.
He's like, this is my Roman Empire or whatever. Yeah, it was ill. But so think about that though. So that there's one I want to get to, to kind of hold space for the dudes that are not to apologize to Jonathon Majors cast, right? But there is something to the constant parading of black men, mostly deservedly, through the town square in the pillory. And the fear and feeling that you can't get too hyped up and too fanfare behind a given figure because this stuff is bound to happen,
I'm surprised Marvel's not doing more vetting though. That's the thing that always trips me the fuck out. Like,
who else did they get caught up with though? Like, this is the first time I feel like
they built their empire around Robert Downey Jr. Like, true. I mean,
right?
They gambled,
right, but that was unintentional. Marvel wasn't what they are when that was being
true.
done.
But your
resources are tenfold now. Yeah.
Here's my logic around why they wouldn't necessarily have done it for Majors. It's because the nature of Kang is that they can make him whatever they want him to be. Like his story in the comic books is ambiguous enough. Like his story in the comics, even if you go Earth 616 specifically, is subject to change enough that you can basically just like kill that character off and make him whoever you want him to be. So I think that it was a very low risk investment for Marvel. So
and high reward, because
why haven't they fired him?
Because if he's found not guilty, he's going to get his career back. And I won't say deservedly so per se. I'll just say if we look at Hollywood's track record on how it handles abuse or toxic behavior, this is relatively mild for some, like, again, you're talking about Brad Pitt punching his own children on the airplane, and
Fassbender still has a career,
right?
What did Fassbender do?
Oh shit, man, you gotta do your Googles on that one. Yeah, man.
I just watched The Killer.
Fassbender was on some wild shit. This was like a while ago though, but it's resurfacing. Yeah, look that up.
Okay.
Abuse.
We have the dude talking about assaulting a masseuse on Netflix's #1 show with the Asian girl.
Oh, the beef thing.
Hollywood doesn't have, and this is the difficult thing about any conversations about abuse and victim centered anything, is the powers that be don't really care. So it becomes this football to juggle around a lot of times, because the motherfuckers don't care. Like you made a good point before, like people like Mel Gibson and Chris Brown, they got their careers back, but they didn't get the career they were on the way to get at the time. They got a career back. But a lot of people got their whole careers back if it was quiet enough and if there was enough plausible deniability. And considering, considering the relatively, what's the word we're going to say, conflicting nature of this story, whatever the verdict is, the opposing viewpoint, whatever the verdict is in this case, the people who oppose it are going to have a valid case. Is that fair to say?
They're going to have a case. I don't know if they'll have a valid case.
Well, plausible. It won't be like niggas with Tory Lanez, is my point. Yeah. And so if he happens to be found not guilty, there won't be a ton of people arguing that this is a miscarriage of justice, and most people genuinely do not care about victims of abuse. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So, and the way the news cycle works with your boy Puffy and Giuliani just this other day, coming into the conversation, and God knows who's going to drop, after the new year or whatever, like what name is going to pop up after the new year.
You think they have a list, naughty or nice?
You know what I'm saying? It'll end up being a situation where he gets his career back, and
we'll see. Okay. One thing I want to maybe circle back to real quick before everybody gives their kind of like closing remarks is that concept of mutual abuse before, because I think Alvin gave a really like well thought out and like strong stance on its misuse. Do we think, not that it's common, but that there are situations where partners are simply, because as you said, a partner slapping a partner who's been consistently abusive to them is one thing. two people both abusing each other is another thing. Both are wrong, because if both people are abusing each other, then that's a wrong thing. But that's separate from someone just retaliating against a campaign of ongoing abuse. So my question is about the mutual abuse element. If you've got two partners who regularly strike one another, scratch one another, scream at each other, grab one another, that kind of thing, which is, in my understanding, a very like a common thing. There are people in relationships doing that, and FD, you alluded to the same thing. How do we parse that out? How do we address that?
So,
and do we think that there's any possibility that this Jonathon Majors situation falls into that, based off the things that I recounted earlier?
I think there's some possibility, but I don't want to pontificate on that too much.
That's fair. That's fair.
But I will, because my thing with this is, and this is maybe cynical, I just feel like we've given way too much energy and influence and power to a carceral mentality towards these things. If two people are in a toxic relationship, or possibly mutually abusive, or even if one is being abusive to the other, the best solution to that is not a carceral punishment consequences framework. It's a support framework. Because while I don't think it's good for men or women, especially women, to be in abusive relationships, those relationships will have so many different things hinging on them that if you really care about helping that woman, you need to center her actual needs and intentions in whatever you do about that problem. And so if she's really about not sending her abuser to jail, while there's probably should be a line there, right? Like you shouldn't just be like, we'll listen to you as he like holds knives to your throats and shit. Like we shouldn't be doing that. But we also shouldn't, because what tends to happen is a man transgresses, abuses his wife or girlfriend. The community or public perception comes, we throw him in jail, we cancel whatever it is, and then we move on. And the thing that is at most like of need is that person's like the victim there.
Well-being.
Well-being.
And nothing's done about it.
And nothing's done about it. And so I get frustrated because I often don't have the best language to like engage with that philosophy, but there needs to be a shifting of what our priority is, even when we enter these conversations, which is not so much the carceral response to abuse or transgression. And this is not just in like intimate partnership. I think this is in general. We've gotten way too into the feeding frenzy of finding a bad guy. You know what I'm saying? Like there's something about the people really loved, like we had I don't know if you saw the H Bomber guy video about the dude plagiarizing.
Yeah, I saw of it, but I didn't watch it.
Right. And so like
don't get me
wrong, I don't fuck with that dude. I didn't like that dude before, and I was very satisfied to watch that video. I didn't know he was plagiarizing though. I just didn't fuck with his content. And he had did some fuck shit to some of my people.
Wait, which guy are we talking about?
Summerton, the guy that plagiarized, the main guy that was the star of the video. But I was hesitant to even really like celebrate or participate in his downfall because I knew there would be like this feeding frenzy of, oh, we got a new guy, we got a valid target to jump on, and I knew that would happen. And then what happens next is people look for the next person to do that against.
Not to fix up the problem.
Not to fix the problem, but who else did something bad that we can drag? And you know what I'm saying?
I think though, maybe part of my question is, and maybe even as I'm asking it, I'm thinking that there's a possibility that I'm asking the wrong question and it's actually leading the conversation in the wrong direction. So I'm open to that as a response as well. But I think what my question is about male victims and where that fits into this conversation, however small the percentage may be.
So it's not as small as you think, especially with black men. It's a lot larger than people realize. But even then, the solution is social support, healthcare, employment, economic viability. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
The problem is within a culture, gender wars atmosphere online, there's so much fervor to find a valid female abuser figure to pillory. Like think about the black therapist. Think about the black therapist system. So she was wrong, in my opinion, for how she came at what she was doing. What
but
happened
people were looking
after
for somebody
that?
to pitchfork. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The fact that she even became viral was not because what she said deserved that type of attention, but because there's a lot of these types of dudes searching for their Black Amber Heard. You feel me? And Amber Heard herself,
100% fair.
you know, toxic, et cetera, what that turned into.
even if she was an abuser, what that thing was way bigger than what that case was.
Exactly. At the end of the day, we do need to develop better discourses. I say this all the time. Develop better discourses around men's issues that do not hinge on Western chauvinism and reifying patriarchal frameworks of masculinity. But we also need not have that be in service of just reversing the carceral framework and finding women to punish to prove that women aren't good. Like a lot of the manosphere dudes, their whole thing is how can we prove women are bad actually? You know what I'm saying?
How can we prove that they're actually the problem? That all this abuse and murder is actually them doing it.
It's actually them doing it. It's the same way white people would. You know who the real racists are? The black people that talk about races.
Black
you know
people
what I'm
are
saying?
really the racists.
The real racists.
That's what's causing all of these problems, honestly.
They're stealing all of our spots at Harvard, even though they're 2% of the population. You know, like that kind of shit.
Isn't that right, my Asian friend?
Yeah.
Alvin, I talked a lot. I feel like I talked over you there.
I don't have anything to add on that, man. I think you summed that up beautifully. Like, I think you're spot on.
Thank you.
Well, look, if your black boyfriend starts telling you need to act like historically significant,
How could you expect them not to do that, Alvin? And shame on you for and by the way, shame on you for Ruck pulling that joke earlier cut that out.
we gotta
Cut that moment out. Just have a blank and that it's an awkward edit
cleanly.
because you can cleanly do that joke because you've
It's a good
earned that.
one.
It's a good one.
It's a good one, man.
Oh
Good
my fucking
build-up,
god! God damn it!
all that shit.
I'm sorry.
look, all right, look.
Okay.
If you're running down your 7th New York block and you look over your shoulder and see a British white woman chasing you, you may be seeing a red flag. But at the same time, if you're sending out texts that heavily imply that you physically abused your partner in a prior altercation, it's probably you that's waving the red flag. It's been Waving the Red Flag podcast. It's been Eddie. It's been Josh. No, it's been FD. It's been Alvin. That's the podcast. Look, subscribe, like, join as a member on Patreon, YouTube, Spotify if you want bonus content, if you want to see our live, like the one that we did with FD earlier. And we got FD's working on a new video that we're going to be in. So, check that out when it does come out. FD, you got anything that you want the people to know? Where can they find you? Where should they see your stuff? What do you got going on?
This is coming out Wednesday.
Yeah.
Check out the White Rapper Paradox. It should be out either Monday or Tuesday, and possibly even today when this video drops. Check out the Signifier B-Sides channel because there'll be a side video about white rappers there around the same time. Check out the new Signifier podcast, that I just launched. That's my slogan.
I like that. Oh wait, is that the slogan or is that the name of the podcast?
I'm either going to call it podcast or a signified podcast, and then the slogan is going to be welcome to a signified podcast. Podcast. I've just decided that recently because I think it's hilarious.
Podcast and so can you.
I fuck with that.
It already has a episode with me and my wife, which I think a lot of people. It has really strong. Like, it's funny. So I have 2 episodes. I have me and my wife, and me with Mark Lamont Hill talking about Palestine. And by far, me and my wife's episode with bad audio is the most popular and appreciated episode. This is why I put it up there first, because I'm like, look, my baby got she not gonna, I never asked her to be a future mayor's wife, but god damn it, she could have if she wanted to. Coretta Scott Signifier, indeed. Yeah, that's all I got.
Okay, cool. Yo, I emailed Mark Lamont. If you got to connect,
I gotta connect. He's ghosted me since we talked. But he is I at least have a connect to him. If you want to try to grab one.
Yeah. If it seems like if your impression is that it seems like he might be a match, because I was looking back through content and I was like, nah, the comedy plus political commentator shit, I feel like he could hit clean.
He does want to do, his goal talking to him is to kind of get into the Roland Martin, Boyce Watkins space.
Oh, we can amp the fuck out of that, man. Like, we can do this.
And so, but Mark Lamont Hill is much further left than both of them, especially Boyce. Like,
he's also
Boyce is
smarter.
Yeah, to be real,
bro.
To be frank,
we can make something work with that. Yeah, cool. Anything else?
This fucked up rug right here. Like, what's my cat doing?
The rug tearing the shit up.
He's tearing some shit up. It is what it is.
Cats they just destructive.
Yeah, people do not understand.
They're predators.
Yeah, he's trying to murder a rug.
That's why you can't feed cats a vegan diet, because they're literally like beasts of the wild. They're just very tiny.
It's a red flag.